Greetings, SAG-AFTRA Strike supporters, and welcome to Tune Out. I am your host, TV's Noah Houlihan. This will be a podcast where we do something other than stay tuned. With me, as always, is Laura Prince.
Hi, and we also want to say that we stand in solidarity with the Writers Guild of America, too.
Did I not include them?
You did not.
I apologize.
So I wanted to make sure we got them in there. Now that I've corrected you, what's up?
So today, our lovely patrons who are sticking by us during these weird times have asked us to take some time to discuss our theater experiences, our live theater experiences. So we're going to take some time and talk about some of the best and worst shows that we've gone to and been a part of.
Okay.
So I think the best way to do this would be to start with shows that we've seen. And then we'll transition to our acting careers. So what do you want to start with, our best or our worst when it comes to going to see live theater?
Let's start with our best. I feel like I'd feel very unkind starting off with like things I didn't like about live theater.
Okay, that's fine. Do you have your immediate what was the best show you've ever seen?
One of my favorite live theater experiences, it's not the best show I've ever seen, but I saw Evil Dead the musical.
Oh, yes.
At the Prince Music Theater in Philly, and it stayed with me because I think we've talked about this. I think I've told the story recently about the splatter zone and the blood geyser.
Yes, but do retell.
So at the very end of the show, there's geysers in the ceiling that shoot blood all over a audience group known as the Splatter Zone. And we saw it on a night that the blood geyser decided to malfunction.
Yes, in the best way possible.
And it just kept going and going and going. And the actor who played Ash eventually just looked down at the audience, forced to address it, and went, "Well, you paid for the Splatter Zone, pal."
Yeah. Well, the rest of the actors couldn't hold it together.
No.
They all just started giggling to themselves.
Because it went on for a solid minute. That does not sound like a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just sit in silence for a minute, and then you'll be like, oh, it's a really long time.
Yeah. And also, imagine sitting for a full minute under, a sprinkler head.
Yeah.
And I just remember that wonderful moment where Ash said, "It's got to be almost done now." And, yeah, it just just started to sputter as it reached the end of its container of blood.
Yeah, 'cause it eventually just ran out.
Yeah.
It didn't fix itself.
No.
It just ran out of blood.
And so Ash high-fived everybody. It's those very special this is live theater moments are always very special when you know you're seeing something that doesn't usually happen.
Yes. I love when you see something that is a harmless, funny mishap.
Mm-hmm.
No one was hurt. No one was harmed. It was just a moment. I found out this about the recent revival of The Music Man, that apparently Hugh Jackman and Sutton Foster planted character breaks.
Oh, really?
To convince the audience they were seeing something special.
Oh,
but because of the internet, everyone's like, did they break at this part too for your show?
That's interesting. Because that's a big stand-up comedy move, is you misspeak on purpose so you can do other jokes you have planned.
Yeah.
So, that makes sense.
But that's the first one that stands out for me because it was an enjoyable show. It's such a fun show technologically, just because it's so analog.
Yeah.
Because the set, they do the possessed house, but they don't lean on the projections that a lot of modern musical theater. So someone's off stage grabbing strings to pull stuff, and the moose head is a puppet that speaks and eventually sings.
Yeah. Evil Dead the musical is great.
I really enjoyed it.
What a great show that is.
We saw it twice in the Prince Music Theater.
Mm-hmm. That's how good it was. Required twice viewings. For me, the first one I always think of is I went to school for theater, and we would go to the American College Theater Festival. And basically, there were workshops and stuff, but I always went and I tried to see as many shows as possible. And I saw Hair.
Okay.
And like I remember it was the hot show to see at ACTF that year. And the cast came out before the show while we were in line and just like improv'd a song, like a stomp song, like they were banging on the walls and stuff. At the end, they have like this big celebration because it's Let the Sunshine In.
Yeah.
And they just grabbed people out of their seats and
had them dance in the aisles, pulled them on stage.
Yeah, so I was on stage at the end with like all these other people just dancing with the cast. And they won Best Show. So like I was just on stage during that. I was like, this is crazy. And one of my fellow actors that I knew, that I looked up to a lot, his name was Jeff. He was seated front row, and at intermission, one of the cast members came out and stole his hat. And then during intermission, they had a chase scene through the set where he was trying to get his hat back.
I want my hat.
Yeah, I was like, that's very interesting to see happen. And like, so many people thought it was a plant. And I was like, no, that's my buddy Jeff. He's definitely not part of this show.
Yeah, he just wants his hat back.
So like, that was very free and like, oh, it was such a good show. It might be the best show I've ever seen, was that Hair.
Yeah, Hair is a very interesting show because it's so... it gives so much freedom to its actors in a way that not as many shows do now.
Yeah.
That was a very... I always think I lump Hair and Godspell together.
Yeah, Godspell is very similar in that kind of freedom.
And because I remember like Godspell, everyone... my school did Godspell because it was the rights were cheap. And you could just kind of make the costumes out of anything. Mm-hmm. And the only person who got vetoed was a friend of mine named John. Tried to borrow my Batman t-shirt. But he wasn't playing Judas.
Yeah, if you were playing Judas, that would make sense because Jesus famously wears a Superman shirt in that shirt.
Yeah, and that's the only reason he was not allowed to wear that shirt.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Because that Batman shirt was in, I think, 3 productions that year. I wore it once.
I will definitely have a lot to say about Godspell when we get to things we've been in.
I'm trying to think. You kind of have a lot of... There's so much sentimentality attached to these experiences because that's what makes live theater so fascinating.
Yeah.
Is that so much is going to be attached to your personal experience in the theater. Mm-hmm. Because I'm thinking about The Producers.
Okay.
The Producers was the very first Broadway show I ever went to.
Oh, really?
Yes, my mom gave me a choice. I could have a Sweet 16 birthday party, or she would take me to New York City for the weekend. We would do like a behind-the-scenes showbiz tour.
Cool.
Where we went to Radio City Music Hall and toured and met a Rockette.
Nice.
They took you to a Broadway theater and walked you around backstage and showed you props. Mm-hmm. So I was on the stage of the New Amsterdam Theater where Lion King was playing at that time.
Oh, wow.
And I got to look at the set. They were like, please don't touch anything.
Yeah, for the love of God.
I was a theater kid, so I was like, I'm not going to touch up Broadway actors' props.
Yeah.
Stage manager would have my head on a spike outside as a warning. But they were like, and they were like, there was only 3 people on this tour. It was my mom and I and then one other family. And they looked at me and the other teenager who had clearly dragged their family. And they were like, do you guys want to sing something on the stage?
Ooh.
And I was like, hey. So I sang What I Did for Love on a Broadway stage.
Oh, wow.
Which, in front of no one, because it was an empty
course.
theater, but it's a thing I got to do. Mm-hmm. And I just realized, I hope our friends don't listen to this, because if we ever do play Dirty Laundry, the Dropout show, that's a really good Dirty Laundry for me.
Yeah, that is a really good one. Wow, that's incredible. I didn't know that.
But none of that is about the producers. That was the show that I went to go see. And it was the first time I had gotten to like really look at what was playing in New York and choose something for myself. I saw a show in the West End before I saw something on Broadway.
Yeah, what'd you say?
I saw Les Miserables and Phantom of the Opera.
Ah, very nice.
My family went to London. We were given like, what do you want to do? And everybody in my family had like, my mom wanted to see the Sherlock Holmes Museum. And I was like, I'd like to see a show in the West End because I'm a theater kid. And they went, which show? And then I played a game. I couldn't choose between Les Miserables and Phantom of the Opera for no reason. Not because they were my mom's two favorite shows and I thought I could grift tickets to both.
Well played.
And I did. But that hit different. And I went to the stage door.
Right.
And I met some of the actors. I met the actor who was playing Carmen Gia at the time. This was long after the original Broadway cast. This was later in the 2000s. Because it opened in 2001. Matthew Broderick and Nathan Lane were long gone. But there was something so incredibly magical about like my first Broadway show. And I made fun of my mom forever for it. Because she was worried that we would need to get a cab back to our hotel, which was not that far from the Broadway theater we were at, the St. James. It was like 10 blocks. And she's like, it might be really scary at night. Because my mom is thinking of like Fear City, 1980s New York. And I was like, no, it's a theme park now.
Yeah.
And so we leave, and we got out at the same time as The Lion King. So the streets were flooded with children with their little Simba plushies, as my mom was like, I guess we're not gonna die. And I was like, no, Virginia. I think we're good. So it's nothing, like, the performance was good. It was the producers. Right. It was great. But that experience was so important to me. And it's like, we were at Sardi's over the summer, and I saw a mother and a daughter, and I kind of got a little, like, choked up.
Yeah.
Because it was right around the same, like, situation.
Yeah. My first Broadway show was Title of Show.
You went all the way to Broadway for a 4 chairs set?
Yeah, they'll be fine with only 4 chairs. When I was in college, I had a friend who was super into Title of Show and was like showing me the YouTube videos, and I was like, this is awesome. And then I went up to New York, and it was the show I could get tickets for.
Yes.
And it wasn't very expensive. I was way up in the balconies. I remember I took a picture of my playbill, and the usher yelled at me.
Yes, it was a very different time.
Yeah.
Now they actually set up the pre-show. They want you to. I think we're going to say this now because this is going to come up. We saw Back to the Future this week. We saw opening night of Back to the Future.
Yes.
And the scrim, or the like pre-show curtain, actually says like no cell phone use during the show. Or no photography. But you can take pictures of this.
Yeah. And
hashtag Back to the Future. People, it's now a thing to take a picture of your playbill, and it's free advertising for them now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now that it's actually strongly encouraged to take a picture with your playbill, take a picture under the marquee.
But they didn't want me to take pictures of the set because they didn't want pictures of the set to leak. It's 4 chairs, guys. It's 4 chairs on a stage. It was fine. Title of Show has this weird issue of like the songs that were like out before they went to Broadway were the songs everybody knew and loved. Yeah. And then there's extra songs about being on Broadway that are not as good. Like one of the songs is called Awkward Photo Shoot because one of the girls might not have been able to do the show and they were going to replace her.
Oof.
And it's not a good tune.
Yeah.
Like, the show really should end when they get to Broadway, because that's the moment. So, like, having the stuff being about the Broadway run was, like, weird. And just, like, clearly not... They didn't have the time they had to write that song like they did with the other songs. I love Title of Show. I think it's great. And what it represents of, like, truly anyone can get to Broadway. It's hard, but truly anyone can. And they're fine with only 4 chairs.
Yeah, I got curious and I wanted to look up something real quick. You kind of saw it in the hottest of seconds.
Oh, it was not on Broadway for long.
Title of show did not run long at all. I was curious. It ran from July to October.
Because I was dating this girl, and we were trying to get to see a show. I wanted to see title of show. She wanted to see August County?
August Osage County.
Yeah, August Osage County.
Which was the hot play at that time.
Yeah. And I was like, as a compromise, and like something that I thought maybe we could get tickets to, I was like, why don't we go see November? And she yelled at me because she thought I was just doing a bit, that she wanted to see August and I was saying November. November was
An
a
election
Nathan
comedy.
Lane. Yeah. And then like later on she was like, oh, November's a real thing? And I was like, yes!
I love doing jigsaw puzzles, and I have like 3 or 4 playbill puzzles I've amassed over time, and November was on one of them.
Yeah.
Because I looked, and it was playing at the Lyceum, which is one of the smaller Broadway houses. It has 900 seats, which I think is like it's not the smallest Broadway house. Because I believe to be a Broadway house, you have to be over 500 seats.
Yeah.
So, currently Grey House just closed at the Lyceum. A sign that you are in a smaller theater is that if straight plays versus musicals, if a non-musical play generally plays there, it's one of the smaller houses. Because those do not tend to sell as well, with very few exceptions.
Mm-hmm. So I guess I've only have 3 Broadway shows that I've seen, so I'll go through those very quickly. Because one, we saw Back to the Future.
Yes.
It was unbelievable. Made me very happy. It stays very true to the movie, which some people have an issue with, and that's dumb. But amazing performers. I don't have a bad word to say about a single actor.
No, everyone really... Some people are actually like almost a little uncanny.
Yeah.
Like the actor playing Biff is nearly uncanny.
Yeah, he's perfect. They're very similar to the film, except for the actor playing Doc.
Who is Roger Bart,
Yes.
a musical theater mainstay.
Mm-hmm. I know him from the Producer's film.
Yes, he played Carmen Gia in the Producer's film. I always think of him as playing Victor in Young Frankenstein.
Ah.
And I've always had a soft spot in my heart for Roger Bart because we share a birthday.
Ah.
He was also in Disaster, which Disaster is one of those shows you and I considered seeing and didn't.
Yeah, because I remember seeing lots of advertising, and
we entered a bunch of lotteries and didn't win and didn't get tickets to anything.
Yeah.
And I regret that because I really wish we'd either seen Disaster or American Psycho.
Yeah, because we could have gotten tickets to those.
Easily. They might have paid us to go.
Yeah. But Roger, like, he's the only one that, like, made the character his own. Like, he's not doing a Doc Brown impression the whole time.
Yeah.
Which is really nice. And I think was, like, one of the few characters you can get away with doing that with. There's almost an element of, like, Doc Brown knows the medium he's in. Which was cool.
Yes, he would complain about... I don't know where these dancers keep coming from.
Yeah, he's the only one that when he sings, backup dancers just appear.
I am realizing that I think he was Leo Bloom the night I saw The Producers.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm not positive. I'm kind of looking right now. I think he may have been Leo Bloom when I saw The Producers.
Very cool.
He was also... I just pulled up his Playbill vault page, and he was the original Snoopy in You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown in the revival cast that's like the main cast anybody knows. Mm-hmm. So he's been in a lot of stuff. And it's Frederick Frankenstein, not Victor. My bad.
Oh.
Young Frankenstein, they
changed his name. Didn't know that. And then the other one I saw was Hamilton, which is, of course, mind-blowing.
Yeah, and we saw that with a replacement cast. We did not have original Broadway cast money.
Which is now like a lot of people kind of view it the way that I know I viewed Rent, where I was just like, I'm over this. I get it's good, but I don't care anymore. So I'm talking to you, patrons. But yeah, it was unbelievable to see live, and the talent and the production value of just doing so much with just a turntable is just unbelievable. Loved it.
I just cheated real bad on this assignment. I have a spreadsheet of every show I've ever seen live.
I know you do.
So I just went, wait a minute. I can make this way easier on myself. It's one of those things. I have a very different thought about how I view a regular show that went perfectly well is less interesting to me than something where something happened.
Yeah, I mean, I just brought up Hamilton, and it's one of the greatest shows I've ever seen, but I don't have a story to tell you other than the kid next to me kept playing with a fidget spinner and I almost killed him.
Yeah, the theater etiquette has been rough. But I'm looking through this, and I find it so interesting to see what shows I have seen multiple times. Any show I've seen multiple times, it's generally not multiple professional productions.
Right.
It's usually I've seen a professional production, a high school production. I'm not very snotty about it.
Well, let me ask you this. What show have you seen the most?
That would have to be Les Miserables.
You saw Les Mis the most?
Yes, I have, based on my calculations, I've seen Les Miserables at least 5 times.
Wow.
At a high school, on the West End, on Broadway, and twice in Philadelphia.
Okay.
I used to see a lot of things on tour. My mom was really uncomfortable with New York City, but she would take the Patco over into Philly whenever. So I used to see everything on tour.
Yeah.
I saw Seussical on tour. I saw The Who's Tommy on tour. There's certain things I actually regret because I couldn't convince my mom to see Tick, Tick, Boom on tour.
Ooh, that would have been good.
There's certain shows that I just couldn't convince her to see. She had gotten me tickets to the Rocky Horror Show because it was supposed to tour, and then it got replaced in the season.
Oh, really? That's
and so we were no longer able to see it, and I was really sad about it.
Yes.
But I have seen Rocky Horror Show live twice.
Yeah, dear listener, that is still not checked off on my bingo card, is seeing Rocky Horror.
I have seen 2 productions of Ragtime in the same theater by different companies.
Okay.
Just in the same, rentable theater. 2 different companies had done Ragtime.
Okay.
Yeah. It's...
And any thoughts? Any memories to share? Or
I don't like Ragtime.
Okay.
The other one I would say, I've seen Avenue Q 3 times. I've seen Beauty and the Beast twice. Evil Dead the Musical twice within weeks of one another. I'm trying to think of another really good. I think there is these 2 shows are very inextricably linked in my head. I saw Fame the Musical and A Chorus Line.
Okay.
Within weeks of each other.
Really?
And these were both shortly before I turned 16. And it really solidified, theater was going to remain an important part of my life forever.
Where'd you see Fame?
I saw it at a regional theater.
Okay. Because I also saw Fame around that time. And I was like, would that be weird?
So I saw it at a community theater.
Okay, I saw it in Philly.
Yeah, no, I saw regional, this was a smaller local production.
Okay.
And A Chorus Line was also a smaller local production, but we had one inexplicably large professional house in my region that does not seem to run shows anymore, sadly. But they would run professional shows, and I was not sure there.
Oh, look at you.
A few friends went to school much closer to it, and they were ushers there. They got me the gig, and I got to see Miss Saigon for free there.
Nice.
And yeah, this is such a hard prompt for me because I've seen by my notes, I've seen at least 82 shows, and I'm almost certain I'm missing some.
Why does this make it a hard prompt? It sounds like you have a lot to talk about.
Because because how do I choose a few to talk about?
The ones that have memories tied to them.
They all do, though.
Well, then tell us one.
I just put you just hear me peck in Back to the Future, so I had that in there, which is my 81st musical. I'm going to talk about two that, again, they're linked. I saw them years apart, but they're linked for a very funny, similar reason. Shows my mother regretted taking me to.
Okay.
My mom took me to a lot of shows when I was growing up, and she took me to Little Shop of Horrors.
Okay.
And she had only ever seen the film with Rick Moranis and Ellen Greene. And listeners, I'm sure you know that, like, the end of the movie is happy.
Yeah.
There's a reprise of Somewhere That's Green. The two of them live happily ever after. You see the plant in their garden, but, like, oh, it's the end. The musical doesn't quite end that way.
Certainly not.
I was 10, and my mother was not aware of this. Additionally, when she thought of the dentist, she thought of Steve Martin. Not some guy in leather assless chaps.
Right.
This also happened right on the heels of we saw Grease, and my mom did not realize they would actually moon us. But we were in the nosebleed, so I didn't see a lot of butt. This was a smaller community theater, and it was a lot. And then a few years later, she took me to see the Full Monty. You know what the Full Monty's about?
Of course I do.
So
It's in the title.
My mom took a 15-year-old girl to see the Full Monty.
Oh.
And was, I guess, not expecting the Full Monty. Now, you don't see anything. There's a reason it's not generally done in very small theaters. Because the way they do the Full Monty is there's usually lights behind the actors. And at the moment they take the last thing off, they are extremely backlit.
Yeah, so you get the silhouette.
So you get the silhouette, but you do not see more of the actors than the actors want you to see.
Yeah.
And then they run backstage and they do curtain call in robes. And it's cute and fun and very silly. My mom was not prepared for that. And we saw it when I was in college in a relatively regional production that was a much smaller house in a matinee on a Wednesday. Do you know the stereotypes about, like, weekday matinees?
No, what would that be?
Especially in smaller houses, there's kind of a stereotype that it's going to be an older crowd. Okay. So I am the youngest person in this audience, by at solid 20 years. Probably the next youngest person might be my mother. And it's a small theater. So when I run into one of the actors at Starbucks an hour later, he goes, "You were just at the show." And I watch my mom die inside. As I'm, like, talking to one of the actors who I've just seen more of than we had anticipated.
Well, there's a moment where they get naked in hair.
Yes.
And I remember talking to one of the actors, and I was like, "So what's that like, being naked on stage?" He's like, "It's the best. It's very freeing." And I was like, "That's really cool."
I don't think I could do it.
I've gotten down to underwear on stage on multiple occasions.
We'll talk about this if...
Yeah, I still have more to say about things I've seen. So.
Yeah, let's go.
Because I know the show that I've seen more than any other show is Jesus Christ Superstar. Because my mom loves Jesus Christ Superstar. So
and you went to Catholic school.
So we went to see it a few times. And I can say that I've never seen a good production of Jesus Christ Superstar. Like, the moments that, like, really stick out is there was the one version I saw where Judas does, like... Judas hangs himself. And what they did was he looked at a projection of a noose, turned to the crowd, and choked himself, and went, and then fell over. And I was like, this would have been better if you just went off stage. Like, that is so corny.
It's notoriously difficult for theaters with no budget to pull off the effect.
Oh, I'm not saying that they should have done the effect. I'm saying that
They did
choking yourself with your hands and then going, bah, is the bad decision as a replacement to that effect.
Yeah.
The other big memory I have is I saw, like, the official Jesus Christ Superstar tour, where Judas was played by the Judas from the film.
Okay.
And was incredible. And Jesus was played by Sebastian Bach of Skid Row and was miserable as Jesus Christ. Because, like, he kept trying to be a rock star. But, like, the moment that's in my mind is him trying to sing and him going, if your slate is clean and you can throw stones, if it is not, then leave her alone. And I was like, did you give up?
How did Gethsemane work it? Because Gethsemane is notoriously one of the most difficult songs in musical theater. How do you do with that?
I just remember, like, halfway through giving up and, like, not really fully paying attention. Like, I would have left if I could have. And then at the end, because Jesus and Judas were the big stars, they both ran out for, like, extra applause time.
Yeah, like an encore curtain call.
Yeah, they did an encore curtain call, and they were thrown flowers, and Sebastian Bach ate them because he's a rock star. Sebastian Bach was not... I saw it in Philadelphia. A friend of mine had tickets to it for a later performance, and by the time he had gone, Sebastian Bach had been fired.
Wow.
And replaced with another actor.
Wow.
He was abysmal as Jesus. Wow. You're an abysmal Jesus.
You wrote a bad Jesus.
Yeah. You're a bad Jesus, Petey. Yeah, that was... it's a shame. Like, there's some really good music in Jesus Christ Superstar, but, like, every time I've tried, it's been... Oof. But along the same lines of your Full Monty story, I do need to tell this story, where I went and saw Medea.
Oh boy.
Not Tyler Perry, the old Greek show Medea.
Right.
Where Medea kills her children to spite her husband Jason and then flies away on a chariot.
Right.
That is the plot to that. So I saw this as part of a field trip when I was a freshman in high school. And we saw a college showing of Medea. And it was gender swapped.
Okay.
So Medea was a man, Jason was a woman, and nobody wore shirts. Nobody.
Okay.
They wore pasties.
Ooh.
But nobody wore shirts. And the issue with it was, like, everybody was, like, mature about it. And then there was a lot of jumping. And once the jumping began, it was really hard to focus. And I remember talking to my teacher about it. And she was like, what did you think? And I was like, I thought it was a very interesting interpretation of the play. We had just read it in class. I was like, I thought it was interesting. And then she went, too much jumping, though. And I was like, yeah, right? They might as well have had trampolines. It was an uncomfortable situation for everyone involved.
How'd your teacher do?
My teacher had to come back and, like, explain to the principal what had happened. It didn't stop us from going on more field trips, though we did have an incident about field trips a couple years later. We went and saw... There was a play that we went to, or our playhouse in Philly we went to pretty often. We saw The Lovers.
Okay.
Are you familiar with The Lovers?
Faintly.
It's basically two one-acts. One is called The Winners, where the lovers both end up dead. And the other is called The Losers, where they end up together but miserable. And it's
Okay.
just kind of like this, what is good about love and all this other stuff. It's nice. But we saw Copenhagen.
Okay.
Do you know Copenhagen?
Yes.
It's about like the discovery of the atomic bomb. It was in partially the round, like two quarters, half. It was like angled.
Huh.
And the stage was just a circle
Okay.
and with a bench on it. And as the lights went down, for some reason, everyone was like, "Ooh, lights are going down." And I remember someone screaming like, "Don't touch me there." Like, and
Adults.
it was so boring.
Oh.
It was 3 actors on a plain stage with a bench talking for 2 hours.
That's rough.
That, like, people started to fall asleep.
Yeah.
And, like, I remember, like, getting comfortable. Because I went to a theater school. I think that's kind of important.
Yeah.
And theater folks are very touchy. So, like, we were leaning on each other. And afterwards, we all had to write a report about whether or not we should be allowed to go on field trips after this because we were so disrespectful. One of my friends stole all their programs,
Okay.
and as punishment, he had to either send them back and admit what he did, or write a rave review and make a donation. And he chose the first thing because he couldn't get himself to write a good review of this show.
Wow.
And I just remember writing this paper of just like, while it is my job as an audience member to like enjoy the show, it is their job to entertain me, and they failed to do that.
Whoa.
And while I did not do anything to disrupt the performance, like, I had to do something because I was still sitting in a chair for 2 hours with nothing to do.
Yeah.
It was a really like rough experience, and like I didn't act inappropriately in my opinion, but some of our other classmates were not as poised as me in the face of boredom. But man, that show haunts me.
It's so funny because I was never taken to a Broadway show on a field trip, which I think is very interesting because growing up in like Philly Metro, you would think
Yeah.
that we would. We get to go to the Lincoln Center and see Sweeney Todd.
Ooh, very nice.
Our parents were all just like, "Oh, you're gonna go see the Eaton People musical? Have fun." No parent cared.
Yeah.
Sweeney Todd actually might be up there with Les Mis for shows I've seen a lot. I saw a weird production in like a church in Philly that like a friend of a friend was in.
Okay.
One of those, I didn't drive until I was 21.
Okay.
So a lot of my high school and college experience was getting in a car and being like, guess I'm going wherever we're going. Because I don't have a car and I don't really have any say. Let's go. So like, oh, I guess we're seeing Sweeney Todd tonight. All right. So that was like my big field trip. A lot of Broadway shows, I've seen more Broadway shows than you, but a lot of it was group rate in college,
yeah.
like the bus trip.
Right.
You would, every semester there'd be the bus trip, and you'd pay way less than you'd ever pay any other way, and you'd get the bus and New York and a show. Never the big show. Like, you weren't seeing whatever the biggest show was. You just weren't. Because you weren't getting tickets at a group rate to that. I got to see The Wedding Singer with Stephen Lynch
That's incredible.
and Laura Benanti. Like, I did see the John Doyle Sweeney Todd. Again, Sweeney Todd. And, yeah, second separate production of Sweeney Todd. I've seen 2 New York professional. I didn't... tried to enter the Josh Groban lottery, but that needs to be done several days in advance, apparently. So we got to see Spring Awakening, and I believe most of the original Broadway cast was still there. I think it was the very end of them being there.
Right.
And Avenue Q, the only Broadway play I've seen twice on Broadway.
Oh, jeez. So lucky.
I saw it with the original Broadway cast, my 17th birthday gift, because I figured out that was just what I wanted. I wanted to be taken to New York and to go see a show. Now, we would do, like, Sunday matinees.
Right.
Most of the time, we wouldn't... We only stayed that one time, because it was my 16th birthday. The rest of the time, we would just, like, get up super early, get the train in New York, do New York, do the show, and then get the train back and be home by, like, 10. But I got to see it with, like, Stephanie D'Abruzzo, John Tartaglia, Rick Lyon. The entire original Broadway cast was still there. Because that was what I wanted for my birthday.
That's a great gift.
Yeah, until you have to watch puppets have sex with your mom sitting next to you.
Yeah, I understand.
My mom laughed in my face during that scene. Because she was laughing at me willing myself to die in that chair. Because I'm like, I'm 17. I'm like the prime, like, ugh.
Yeah.
My mom is watching this with me.
But you didn't have any problem with the full Monty.
You didn't see anything. You saw more of those puppets.
I'm just saying.
I was also like, the John Golden Theater is much smaller. And the seats I had for Full Monty were cheaper. Because we tended to get cheap seats for these shows in Philly.
Yeah.
We'd get better seats for New York. Because my privilege is going to show real bad right here. The Philly shows were not gifts. They were activities I did with my family.
Right.
The New York shows were presents, so more money was spent on better seats, because these were, like, I'd get to see a show on Broadway once a year, tops, if I was lucky.
Yeah.
My mom went to see Curtains with me because she wanted to see a murder mystery with David Hyde Pierce.
Okay, that makes sense.
So that was, like, one of the other Broadway shows. Because there was a time period when I was in college and college-aged where I got to see more Broadway shows than any other period of my life.
Right. Here's an odd question for you. Because it seemed like all the shows that you saw were like destinations. Like, oh, I really want to do this. I really want to do this. Have you had any experiences where you went to a show completely blind and unaware of what you were about to witness?
Have I ever just gone into New York, gotten tickets and hoped for the best? Or have I ever gone to a show and known nothing going in?
Know nothing going in. Like, going in completely blind.
Mamma Mia.
You didn't know anything about Mamma Mia when you saw it?
I knew the song Dancing Queen, and that's about it. I didn't know it. My mom wanted to see Mamma Mia. I wanted to see Evita, which was running in Philly right around the same time. But because there was a blizzard, Sound of Music got canceled, and my field trip got moved to Evita. Because they took us to Evita on a field trip. And then my mom was like, okay, well, I'm not spending money on tickets to Evita. I want to go see Mamma Mia. Let's go see Mamma Mia.
Yeah.
I knew the song Dancing Queen, and that was it. And I absolutely adored Mamma Mia.
Yeah, Mamma Mia is a good show.
What show did you go in blind to?
So many, because a lot of my theater experiences came from ACTF. And at ACTF, like, there were originals. Like, I saw stuff that you will never see again. I saw a show, I saw it, every ACTF show was put on twice. And I went and made sure I saw this one twice. I want to say it was called, like, Little Monsters.
Okay.
The stage was completely bare except for pieces of foam. And they would kind of, like, move the foam around to create different settings. And it was the story of a detective. No, detective? Lawyer? Maybe a lawyer. Lawyer. Where this boy with autism accidentally kills his neighbor. And the cop, who's also a friend of the lawyer, forgets to read him his Miranda rights.
Ooh.
So he's like, oh my God, I can get him off. And it's like this moral quandary of like, how responsible can we hold this kid? and like, it's my job now to disgrace my friend who failed to do proper etiquette. And that's the only reason this kid's getting off.
Yeah, like, he didn't do procedure.
Yeah. And at the end, he gets him off. He gets the kid off. And he, we kind of have this moment of, like, yay, our protagonist won. And then he goes to talk to the kid, and the kid 100% knows what he did. And it's just kind of like, oh, no! What has our system done? And the performance of everyone, and watching, like, that actor, like, break down of, like, oh, I did my job correctly, and now we're at this. Oh, so well done. On a lighter note, I saw The Life of Leonardo da Vinci, I believe.
Okay.
By an entirely deaf cast. So everything was done through, like,
ASL.
there was no ASL.
Oh.
It was all done through mime and lighting and sound. Like, they danced through light cues. Like, it was so brilliantly done. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And right before we started, I was with a group of my friends, and I explained what the sign language for applause was, which is basically jazz hands.
Yes.
And I was like, we all know how to applaud, right? And they're like, yeah, no, you put your hands together. I was like, no, they're all deaf. It's got to be like this. And they thought I was lying, and I was like, no, this is applause. This is, like, we need to know this. And the show was brilliant, and then there was a silent standing ovation. And that was such a weird thing to be a part of. It's just like, and
did the performers, like, kind of visibly,
oh yeah,
like, have that? Because that's a moment I always really love, is when the performer visibly, like, is almost thrown.
It was great afterwards, seeing them leave the theater and, like, excitingly signing to each other about it. It was, like, very cool, and I told everyone to see it, and the second show ended up getting canceled because they couldn't get it together.
Oh.
And it was like, oh yeah, because I bet this is impossible to put together. Because I remember there was a moment where they tried to get the director to come out, who was backstage, but what do? They're in the other room, and they can't hear us.
Yeah, and there's no, like, Big Brother or God mic.
So, yeah, it was truly something spectacular to witness, and it's devastating that they only got one performance, because it was so good.
Something magical about live theater is that you can see the performer see you. Mm-hmm. We saw Back to the Future.
Yes.
And the actor who played Goldie Wilson is incredible.
Absolutely.
And I know that doesn't seem like a role that usually gets a lot of love, but they did a lot to make that part expanded. Mm-hmm. And he got a huge ovation after his big number. And you could kind of watch him almost break a little.
Yeah.
Because he's a supporting character. He wasn't expecting that.
But this is a breakout role for this guy.
And it was a voracious opening night crowd, and we were talking to people who had come all the way from the UK to see this. And it was just like this really magical moment. And the actor Jelani Remy has been in other things.
Yeah.
However, it was kind of this is his first role where he's starting in a Broadway cast. He was an understudy in a swing in Ain't Too Proud, and he was a Simba replacement in Lion King. This is his first, like, big originating the role on Broadway. So this is it was very lovely.
Yeah. It was keep your eye on him, because he's something else. Another story I just need to tell is I saw a show, I believe it was called 1,000 Brides for 1,000 Brothers.
Oh.
It was supposed to be a take on, what is it, 8 brides?
Seven.
Or 7 brides for 7 brothers. And it was the strangest play I've ever seen. And, like, I think they intentionally tried to bore you.
Oh.
Because, like, we were sitting there and, like, I'm trying to follow the plot. And then we get to this one point where they literally sat on stage and listed nouns.
Oh.
Like, it was 2 characters on stage just being like, a feather, a dung beetle, a puddle, a screwdriver. I was like, what is happening right now?
That sounds
And,
incredibly
like,
boring.
we were all, like, you watched people kind of get uncomfortable. Because, like, I remember, like, looking at the people next to me like, what are we supposed to be getting out of this? And as I looked around the theater, the rest of the theater was doing it as well. And then the brides murder all the brothers
Okay.
in insane detail.
Okay.
The one that I really remember because it happened right in front of me, because I was like 3rd row. She invites him into the bath. She stabs him in the chest and pulls out his intestines. I was like, what is happening? I was just screaming into my hands.
Oh.
And, like, that and them naming nouns are the only 2 real memories I have of this show. But it is burned in here forever. And I do, like, I need to say, sometimes at the American College Theater Festival, the shows are open to the public.
Okay.
Because when it was in Philadelphia, they were. Seeing a show with nothing but, like, theater nerds is incredible. I saw the old lady from Szechuan, I think her name was.
Okay.
And it's a play about this woman who lives with her mother who has dementia in, like, her old village. And she doesn't really get to have a life because she's always with her mother. And her mother is kind of manipulating her.
Right.
So she actually ends up having a relationship with this guy. And her mother catches him and throws him out. And he has to go away to, like, war, I think. So he writes her a letter saying, like, this was the greatest night of my life. Like, wait for me. I will be back for you. And gives it to his brother and tells his brother, you put this letter in her hand. Mm-hmm. To no one else but her. And then the next scene is just the brother and the mother waiting for her to come home from the market. And it's just him being like, I don't want to be here. Can I just give this letter to you? And you give it to her? And you know, if he does that, she's going to rip it up.
Yeah.
And, like, so many moments of him, like, about to hand this letter over. And the crowd going, ooh, no! And, like, to feel that energy of the entire room being like, ooh, so electric. And knowing, like, the actors hear that.
Yeah.
They know that they're pulling the strings and they got you. It's so good. It was so good. Like, ACTF was such a special time for me. And, like, God, I wish I could go back to just one more. And just, like, see these shows again.
My school did not have a theater major, so I never went to one. I find it very interesting. My school did not have a theater program. But I did get to do and see a lot of theater. It's interesting. I really mostly think about musicals. I know I've seen straight plays, but a lot of them... There's one that stands out that I just, like... It stands out because I literally don't remember anything about it. It was called Line.
Line?
And it was just actors standing in line.
Ooh. That kind of sounds...
And, like, unfortunately, because it's an absurdist drama about 5 people waiting in line for an event. But what the event is never made clear.
Oh.
It's absurdist theater. I don't love absurdist theater.
I can get behind it if it's short.
Yeah, it was.
I can't deal with like 2.5 hours of waiting for Godot.
It's very interesting. It was a one act, but it's very interesting. I'm looking up the Wikipedia, and it was the longest running off-Broadway show. Mm-hmm. And it had been playing at the 13th Street Repertory Theater from 1974 to 2018. So that is the production I saw.
Okay.
Off-Broadway means it's fewer than 100 seats.
Okay.
And I believe off-Broadway is fewer than 500 seats.
Okay.
Broadway is 500 or more. And I believe there are Broadway houses that sit as many as, I believe the largest one is the Gershwin, which is about 1,800 seats.
Okay.
The Gershwin has been the home to Wicked for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
The next largest ones are the Disney theaters, where Lion King and Aladdin play.
Right.
And the smaller ones are ones like the Lyceum, the John Golden, the Helen Hayes. Those are mostly theaters where you're going to see straight plays.
Okay.
The John Golden's actually where The Shark is Broken is currently playing.
Oh, yeah. I do want to see that. That does sound pretty good. I was going to say we need to switch to shows we were in, but we're kind of already running long. So
do we want to talk about negative experiences we've had?
And I was about to say, we didn't really have many negative experiences. Well, I talked about a couple of mine, but you didn't get a chance. So I think we might have to make this a two-parter, because I definitely want to spend time on some of that.
Are we talking about negative experiences now, or are we splitting our own experiences into the next episode?
No. Tell us about your negative experiences in the theater, because I've already named a few of mine.
So I know you know this one. The only show I've ever kind of wanted to leave was We Will Rock You.
Oh,
which
posh!
And like, I'm not a theater snob. I had a Sondheim phase where I only liked Sondheim for a little bit of my life, but I was well out of that by the time this happened. We Will Rock You, and I love the music of Queen. We Will Rock You is the only show where I was like, I could leave at intermission and be cool with that.
Saw it twice. I went to Toronto to see it, and then saw it again when it was in Philly with you, and was so excited for you to love it along with me.
Oh my god, I hated it so much.
It's a science fiction musical, which is what Queen would have wanted. They loved Flash Gordon.
Yeah, you know
it's very much in the spirit of Flash Gordon.
It actually, I think the things that were bad about it were the attempts to make it pop culture zeitgeisty. I think if they had stayed more timeless like a Flash Gordon, it would have been better.
You didn't like that all the characters were named after famous pop stars?
Yeah.
All right. I mean, for those of you who don't know, it is the future, and the Earth is now known as Planet Mall, and all music is created by machines. There are no artists anymore. So all we hear is Internet Gaga. And the Killer Queen, who is in charge, is trying to stop the Bohemians from rising. And those are people like Scaramouche and what's the other guy's name? Galileo Figaro, who are the resistance, who join up with people like Britney Spears
and
Meat, who have heard the long forgotten records and are inspired by these past artists.
I will give it this. I think if you got a couple of new writers and did a substantial rewrite to the book and like got rid of Planet Mall because that's not relevant anymore.
Yeah.
But really picked up like the AI angle.
Yeah.
I think like you could do something with the show.
Yeah. A lot of the punchlines are Scaramouche being like, that sounds like crap, which is not as strong of a punchline as it should be.
The book is very weak.
The book is weak, yeah.
I mean, the music and lyrics are great. They're Queen.
Yeah. I also remember there's an infuriating moment where they realize where the Hall of the Bohemians is, and they're like, we know where it is, just now how do we get there? And they all stand up and say bicycle. And Scaramouche goes, nah, we're not doing that. And they don't sing Bicycle. And it's like Bicycle's listed in the program just to fool you. It's like, you don't take Bicycle away.
Don't take Bicycle.
It's one of the best Queen songs.
Yeah, like that one stands out as like, there was nothing wrong with the performance. Mm-hmm. There was nothing wrong with the effects. It's just a bad book can really hurt a show.
I listened to the soundtrack like a week ago. It's really good.
I want to talk about an experience I'm still mad about, even though
Sure.
It's an experience I didn't get.
All right.
I won tickets to the sound check for the musical American Idiot.
Yeah.
And I was a poor student and I couldn't, like, I didn't want to ask anyone for money. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have the money to get to New York and back. Like, living, like, in Philly Metro, the train was expensive. And so I didn't go. And Green Day just did a pop-up concert for the people who had won tickets.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of, like, the soundtrack. I like the soundtrack to American Idiot a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's a show that would be I think it's a show that will probably be revived kind of soon.
Yeah, I think the musical version of Jesus of Suburbia, I think, is superior to Green Day's.
Same with Last of the American Girls. Mm-hmm. There are just versions. I actually really like the arrangement of 21 Guns.
Yeah,
too.
it's a lot softer and nicer.
I really like the arrangements. Mm-hmm. And the fact that, like, Broadway singers are just in another caliber doesn't hurt either.
Right.
But I think with Y2K nostalgia, I think there's a really good chance we get, like, an off-Broadway mounting or another Broadway mounting of American Idiot.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I'd love to see get a revival? Sorry, this is just... I'd love to see someone remount Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson in a post-Hamilton world.
Yeah, I think that now would be a fun time for that.
Because that's the emo Andrew Jackson musical.
Right.
I think that would be super, super interesting. I don't have, like, a lot of shows where I'm like, oh, the first show I ever hated. We talked about shows where we went in blind. Mm-hmm. I was 10 years old and I didn't know anything about Carousel. I hate Carousel.
I know you do.
I didn't hate Carousel walking into that theater. I hated Carousel when I left. I had a lot of problems with older Broadway shows because just the very casual treatment of Billy Bigelow hitting Julie. Mm-hmm. And that not being a deal breaker. Rough. And then the whole thing is like, Billy Bigelow's kind of an awful person, and the whole show is like redeeming him.
Yeah.
I'm like, he sucks.
Yes, he does suck.
And I don't love Ragtime.
Yeah, I understand.
For a show I've had to see multiple times. That's a show I've seen multiple times because people I knew were in it.
Yeah.
You went to a theater school. You've had to see things because people you knew were in them.
I despise You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. I've seen that multiple times to see Friends. And I hate Into the Woods. I just absolutely hate Into the Woods. And I saw it because people I knew were in it. And yeah, don't care for that.
I actually really love Into the Woods. Mm-hmm. What's funny, I've never seen Into the Woods live.
Really?
I almost need a second sheet on this spreadsheet of, like, ones I've seen pro shots or filmed or the movie.
Yeah, like Diana.
Yeah, because, like, I didn't see it live, but I saw the pro shot. Mm-hmm. Which I really love pro shots because of that. Because, for instance, Heathers ran very briefly off Broadway. It ran off West End for 5 years. It's actually just announced a closing date on the West End. But we have an English pro shot. Yeah. From the West End production.
Quick Into the Woods story.
That could be a Stay Doomed episode, now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
We might get desperate soon, so.
Quick Into the Woods story. My girlfriend at the time was in it, and she was playing the Baker's wife. Baker's wife, I think? No, Jack's mother.
Oh, those are very different.
Yeah, Jack's
Baker's
mother.
wife is, like, one of the leads.
Yeah. She was playing Jack's mother, and she forgot the words and just went do-do-do-do. Oh. And we roasted her pretty hard because the words she forgot from the song were, in fact, Into the Woods. Do-do-do-do.
Oh my, I love Into the Woods. Like, you just did that and I went, like, in my mind went, into the woods to find the father.
Yeah, she said do-do-do-do and then said the baker's wife's line instead. And then Jack was like, to sell a friend?
Yeah, that's really bad.
Yeah, it was funny, and it's fun to poke fun at people. Bullying is great. No, it was a great inside joke for a while.
I mean, I've seen. I don't want to talk about like non-professional productions I did not enjoy.
Oh, I will. I did many times during this podcast.
Just because, like, I don't want friends. I don't know if any of my friends listen to this, but I don't want them to hear, like, I really hated this production you were in.
Well, when we record part 2 of this, it's going to be about stuff we were in. So I hope you get real cool with that real quick.
Because there was a production where the euphemism is always telling someone they were good in a production.
You were great, yeah.
There was a show where I couldn't even bring myself to tell my friend that they were good in the production because the production was bad and my friend was kind of bad too.
Yeah. It's like, this is just bad. She told him, the lights were good.
The tech wasn't even that great. I think
my seat was comfortable.
Yeah, it was alright. I think one we shared that you did not enjoy this experience, but it's one of my all-time ride or die favorite shows. We saw the City Center Encore's production of Assassins a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I love Assassins.
I think it might just not be for me.
Part of me isn't sure if it's the show is not for you. Because I did not particularly enjoy the production we saw either. City Center Encores, they tend to be a little less rehearsed. They tend to only run for a week or so. They're almost more like a staged concert.
Yeah.
And people have scripts in front of them. And sometimes these productions transfer. That's becoming increasingly common. I believe Into the Woods recently, the recent revival of Into the Woods, started as a City Center's production.
Right.
So it's a very, like, kind of a bare stage, not a lot of setting. And this production went very original to the 90s script. Mm-hmm. They didn't pull the trick with the balladeer. And that bummed me out. The balladeer was played by a black actor. Mm-hmm. And the director did not choose to make any interesting choices regarding how the balladeer and Booth interacted.
Yeah.
Which I think Ballad of Booth has a little bit of a malice to it toward the end. Mm-hmm. Even in the 2004 production with Neil Patrick Harris playing the balladeer, there's a little venom from the balladeer toward the end of, like, he is the least sympathetic to Booth out of all of the assassins.
Right.
And I would have liked a lot more of that venom from this balladeer, considering that Booth says slurs and Booth, like, really, I mean, he's racist. Mm-hmm. And I think you could have really leaned into that venom from the balladeer and, like, kind of had that be like the balladeer hates Booth because Booth does not believe the balladeer deserves human rights. Mm-hmm. Now, the trick with the balladeer, and I'm not going to really consider this a spoiler because pretty much every production of Assassins post-2004 does this. The balladeer eventually becomes Lee Harvey Oswald.
Right.
In the Take a Look Lee scene, it's actually the balladeer we've grown to know and love and befriend over the entire show is ultimately seduced by the assassins to become Lee Harvey Oswald. Mm-hmm. And when done right, it's incredible, it's chilling, it's beautiful, and I felt like that was something I really missed.
Yeah.
It was Corey Michael Smith who played Edward Nygma on
Gotham
as Oswald, which I was really excited by because I thought he was going to be both. And then I was like, oh, it's two different actors. Oh, but they're going to do some really cool stuff. Oh, no, they didn't.
No, they didn't.
They didn't really do anything.
He was good.
I wished they had done more cool stuff with that production.
Yeah. But, like, yeah, I remember leaving that just being like, oh, so that's Assassins? And you being like, no, it's not. There should be so much more. I was like, all right.
It's a shame. It's an incredible show.
Because I believe, like, when we got back, there was, like, a local production of Assassins about to happen. You were like, look, we could see a good version. I was like, no, I'm out. I'm done with this show. I tried.
I regrettably also just missed a production where my friend played the balladeer.
Right.
I was unable to make it, and I'm still, like, kind of bummed out about it. Yeah, I really... There are a lot of shows I really love. And then there's shows that you realize later, you're like, ooh, maybe not. Thoroughly Modern Millie is a show I think about a lot.
Yeah.
I really liked the show when I was younger, and then when you watch it a little older, you're like, oh, this show is very racist. Mm-hmm. The show is so racist, it was cut off because of COVID, but they were originally planning a complete rewrite.
Really?
With an Asian...
To make it thoroughly modern.
Yes. It was... People were calling it Thoroughly Racist Millie.
Oh.
And they were going to have Ashley Park from Mean Girls, I believe, playing Millie. And having... I'm just checking this. Making sure I have it right. Yes, so Ashley Park was intended to play Millie in a City Center's Encore production with a rewritten book.
Interesting.
Because the show was pretty racist. There's a whole plot point where a character pretends to be Chinese American.
Ooh!
And it's as bad as I am implying.
Cool.
Yeah.
Real cool.
And often white actors playing Chinese characters. It was briefly a very heavily done show. Mm-hmm. And then almost like the internet showed up and was like, hey guys. And we were all like, oh, yeah, that's bad. So almost overnight it became it went from being a very heavily produced high school and college show to a show you almost never see.
Interesting.
Because of the racism.
So any last minute stories? Anything else you want to throw out there?
I love theater.
I love theater too.
Going up to New York and seeing Back to the Future made me desperately want to go see more live theater.
Yeah,
I'm
same.
now like...
I missed you, theater. We've been in COVID times for so long.
Yeah, I think that's it. Is like, theater was one of the last things I kind of like got back to. Mm-hmm. And Broadway is clearly not quite back yet.
Yeah, it's still a little awkward.
It's the haves and the have-nots. I actually pulled up the grosses, and it's very much either you are just really just doing great, and you're running at 95%, or you are running at 56, 72, 80%, and it's hard for a show to run on that.
Before we go, I think one thing I'd like to throw out is I saw a fantastic version of Mikado.
Okay.
Mikado is a show about a town where it's kind of like a commune on their own, setting their own laws, and one person is set to be executed.
Okay.
And they didn't nobody wants to kill him, so they make him the executioner. And it's like this weird situation where, if you don't do your job, you'll be fired. So you got to cut your own head off unless you find someone else to be executed in your stead. And, an outsider wanders in and, doesn't have anything to live for. So it's can I execute you so I can live? And it is, I believe, a Japanese show?
It's a Gilbert and Sullivan operetta.
Yes, but it was rewritten by this theater company, and they filled it with sitcom references. So just like every couple moments, it was like, oh yeah, welcome to my town. This is my brother Daryl, and this is my other brother Daryl. So like to include all these like weird TV references really spoke to me, who does this show. So I wanted to shout out Mikado, because it was a very weird experience, but I had a ball. We will come back and we will do another episode of Tune Out where we'll talk about our actual theater performances, because we are both trained actors with quite the catalog of stage performances.
And a lot of mine will probably be stuff I did crew for.
Yeah, I'll include some crew stories as well, because that's also really fun. But thank you for joining us for this episode of Tune Out. This is, of course, the podcast we're doing instead of Stay Doomed during the strike. For information on how you can support the strike, there are links below. Where can people find us?
We didn't get a new email address, so you can email us, The Stay Doomed Show, or on Facebook and Twitter at Stay Doomed. We didn't start new social accounts for this.
Yeah. And if you want to talk to me about ACTF, if any of you have actually went to the American College Theater Festival, I'm at +2 Comedy on X.
And if you want to just kind of talk about, your favorite live theater experiences, I'm at Priorities on X, and I'm at Glitter and Glow Tape everywhere else. Until next time, tune out.
Tune out.